Warning. This podcast contains explicit sexual language and should only be listened to at work if you're looking for an excuse to connect with your HR representative. Additionally, all mentions of the word women include cis and trans women. If you are genderqueer, gender fluid, figuring it out, anything in between, and feel like this conversation is also important for you, you are welcome here.
Will you open up with me? These pages, they can feed your innermost desires. Do you feel inspired? Are you getting what you need? Are you coming curiously? A secret safe with me. And here you can simply be yourself. Sweet romance. Come on in, come on in, come on.
Hi, y'all. This is Jace, she, they, and you found Jace Reads Romance, a community dedicated to empowering women about sex and sexuality through the reading of romance novels. I am in my fangirl era. I'm gonna, I put in the outline pauses for fangirl because I am here not celebrating the release of a book that I am so excited about. I've been waiting for y'all to get your hands on it. I have one of my auto buy authors here with me. I'm losing my mind. And I'm gonna turn it over because I'm already red in the face. Would you like to introduce yourself? Because listeners have heard me talk about you a lot.
Sure, I would love to. My name is Elizabeth Stevens. I am an author of romance. I'm an indie author at heart and primarily, but I just published my first traditionally published title today. It's All Superheroes Need PR. It was my attempt at a contemporary romance. However, it has veered into the superhero monster category rather quickly. So
Yeah.
That is me. But I have other titles that you might have seen. The Bone King and the Starling came out recently. Dark City Omega is a popular one of mine. And so I am just absolutely ecstatic to be here.
Yay. I discovered you last year in prep for Steamulit last year. Not that anyone recognizes anyone else from Steamulit because we were all masked, but that's where I got my copy of this. I love a werewolf, and so I read Dark City Omega, fell in love, made my friend Wiley read it. We did it for a book club episode last fall. I'm not kidding when I say the fangirl is real. And I also know that you have a vampire series, which is on my TBR. So I am really excited. For those listening who have only heard me talk about you, would you like to just share as lengthy or as brief a bio of your history as a romance writer?
Sure. It's a kind of a funny story actually, but I wrote my first story when I was front to back. Well, actually I never finished it, but that's also part of the story. When I was 11 years old, and it actually is one of those butterfly effect things because I was really into American Girl dolls at the time, and my mom's rule was if I wanted an American Girl doll, I needed to read all of the books for the American Girl doll. But there are no Black or any colorful American Girl dolls. Maybe there are today, but there definitely weren't when I was shopping. And they had at the time the build your own American Girl dolls. But since those didn't have stories, my mom was like, you have to write your own. And so I ended up writing this little sci-fi story that on this big box of a computer. I lost a huge chunk, 30 pages, and cried when it powered down and there was no autosave at the time. And my mom rewrote those 30 pages, just real MVP mom. And I ended up getting this doll, but I never really stopped writing after that. But I also never bothered finishing anything. I was always just writing the first like intros to stories because that's
Okay.
always my favorite part. I love watching, like, especially, I mean, as I grew into like a adult fiction writer, adult romance writer, I love like watching people fall in love,
Yeah.
but actually like completing a story, I'm like, we all get it from here. So it was hard for me to finish something. I finally finished something in like 2014 or 13. I was in
Oh,
college at
wow.
the time, I think. And I was like, what should I do with this now? And then I was like, I guess I could try to publish it. So I tried like the traditional querying thing, got
Mhm.
nowhere really. And then a couple years later, I finished what is now Lord of Population, but was then just called Population. My mom was working with a woman who had opened an indie press that focused on BIPOC authors and characters. And so I
Yeah.
published with her in 2015. And that was an invaluable learning experience of what I didn't like in publishing.
Got it.
uh, Press was not for me. And I realized that
Yeah.
sometimes with indie presses, it's really just someone who is not really more qualified than you are, but is just doing their best. And I'm like, well, I can also do
Yeah.
best. And that's where I
Yeah.
came up with like my entire slogan around traditional publishing, which is I can do bad all by myself. So I don't need anybody's help to suck at publishing. So that's when I was like, let me just try. I got my rights back
Yeah.
for that book. The company ended up folding. Like I said, it wasn't doing super well.
Yeah.
I got the rights back to that book. I'd written book 2 already at the time and self-published that. And because, again, one of the terrible decisions that was made was to like basically split one story into 2 books, I ended up recombining them, which is why you'll see Lord of Population is my chonkiest chonk book. I think it's like 170,000 words. It's huge.
Oh my
Um,
God.
it's a good like 500-600 pages, but it's still my book baby and I love it to pieces. And Kane is my absolute favorite MMC I've ever written. Tied maybe with Yaren from book 2 in the Beast of Gadamora series. But yeah, then after that, it was just kind of all downhill from there. I decided in 2020 that I was going to go and try to do this for real, like the author thing for real,
Oh,
and
wow.
instead of just like hobby publishing.
Yeah.
And I had decided then, I was like, okay, one of the mistakes I made with the Lord of Population series is that I'm not good at sticking to genres. So that book is like a dystopian, post apocalyptic, sci fi, fantasy, like super spicy, super gory romance. It's like completely alienates horror readers because of the romance, completely alienates romance readers because of the horror. Takes a very specific kind of reader to really love that book, and the ones that do love it really love it. And I
No,
appreciate
so this is the one that I'm gonna go into next because I'm a massive vampire person, but like you said, J.R. Ward, I'm like, Anita Blake started in the horror section. Like that 30
right.
book series
Yes.
wasn't in romance at all. Like there are
So
people who want to read this.
I know, and I'm rediscovering that
Yeah.
cohort exists, and like finding out
We
how to
do. We're just old
yeah,
now. We're just old.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yes, we're all getting there. We're getting there. Oh, but and at that point, I was like, okay, I had gotten really into sci-fi romance, and that's when I was like, let me try to really try to do this. And I was fortunate enough to live in Germany at the time where you get paid even if you quit your job, like on unemployment and stuff. And it was also happened to be COVID. So I got like a little extra state money that kind of floated me through like 6 months of basically trial
Yeah.
period. And yeah,
Amazing.
I set myself a really low target. I was like, if I can earn $1,000 in a month in six
Yeah.
months, like off of my books, then like maybe I can do this as a career. And that worked out after like month 3, and it's been downhill
Yay.
ever since. But
Up,
definitely,
uphill.
yeah,
Or
okay,
I don't
turn.
know, whatever's good.
Yeah, exactly, with a good one.
Whichever one is whatever's the good one.
Oh,
Um so like I shared, I came through the Dark City Omega. I am in love. I love them. I love them so much. Just like
mm.
my deep, deep appreciation. But so you've been writing for most of your life. When did you become or have you ever been a reader of romance?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think most authors, I should hope, either start or are also readers. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just been a huge reader my whole life. And I think I followed a kind of a classic route into romance, but I was like a middle grade young adult reader for so long,
Mhm.
and then there's always like this hint of romance in these books, but like
Yeah.
very few of them at the time that I was reading were romance first, and I of course I love the fantasy and the sci-fi ones especially. But then Twilight happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, somebody wrote like a romance with vampires. I became like the girl in my language arts class who was obsessed with Twilight.
Uh-huh.
I became the Twilight girl, and I fully accept that endorsement. Because then after Twilight, of course, there's a natural progression to J.R. Ward, and once you're in J.R. Ward, it pretty much unlocks like a gate into this entire realm that I didn't know existed, and it's story's been wrote ever since.
The funny part is I found J.R. Ward first. So I was reading like J.R. Ward, Patricia Briggs, Laurel K. Hamilton, all of those, like Lindsay Sands, Carolyn Sparks before Twilight came out. So at
I
the
just
time,
how
like
do
when
you go
Twilight
back?
came out,
Like there's no
you don't go backwards. But so it was very odd. I was like, I don't want to go back. I have what I want right here, friends. Like,
yeah.
what's wrong with you?
No, if I
Which also
J.R. Ward, I would have probably been like traumatized because I was not. Can't remember how old I was when Twilight came out, but anyways, I was too young to be reading J.R. Ward when Twilight came out. But I am very happy that I have, and I have not gone back to young adult since. I keep telling myself I should because there's some really fantastic young adult stories, but it's so hard to go like back from like the angst and the tension and like the smut of like adult romance.
the smut is definitely hard, but I will say that there is like nothing. There's sometimes those moments of like nobody has ridiculous, deep yearning like a teenager who doesn't know how to express themselves.
Yeah, that's so
Like
true.
there's
True.
like Kaylin Bayron wrote Cinderella is Dead, and there's like nothing like queer yearning of like, I want you so bad and I don't understand it. And what are these feelings?
I love
Which is it's a really nice palate cleanser every so often, but I find I often too I'm like, oh God, YA, do I really have to?
I know my
Um,
palette cleansers are actually horror. I'm like a horror
really?
girly first and
No.
foremost. Yeah.
I jump scare too much. Like even when reading, I am a jump scare. It's really pathetic, and I need redeemable people and love. Like if there's
Yeah,
not redeemable people and love, then why am I bothering? Which is why
right.
I will sometimes go. But so we got to talking already about, I'm like, we're just going through my
Yeah,
list.
I
Seffi's
know.
like, I don't understand, Jace.
Yeah.
You never stay on topic. You've mentioned that you've gone into different subgenres within romance. So there's the sci-fi, there's the fantasy, there's the PNR, there's your current book, which was supposed to be contemporary, and it is. It is contemporary. It takes place now. There are enough modern references, but what inspires you to move from genre to genre, or excites you, or there are genres that you're like, oh, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole? Because I feel like so many authors find a lane and stick in it for much longer than you did, and the I get excited when authors will try new things, or like what inspires them to try new things within this genre.
Yeah, I always say that I'm kind of a strangely like mathematical writer in a weird way, in the sense that like not in the sense that any of my math or science makes any sense, because it absolutely doesn't. Nothing about my books makes a lick of sense. But in the sense that I'm constantly trying to outdo myself. So my
Okay.
goal is always to do different kinds of characters and different kinds of settings and
Mhm.
different kinds of worlds. Like I'm not the kind of author you will ever read that does like an IPB where I have like 150 books all set on the same planet, like with the same.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know how that's possible. I think it's genius, and
It's
especially
because
for me.
they're like not even 300 pages.
Yeah,
They're
it's it's a lot.
they're fast. Like
Yeah, they are.
I'm not going to pick up, but I have a copy of just the first one. But like you can't compare that to like these two. Like they're they have some heft and some
Yes.
chunk to
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Yeah, my books tend to
These
be pretty chunky. So,
love a chunk.
yeah, I know, me too. And it's hard for me to fathom just sticking in the same world. Also, just for me, because I think it's kind of boring to write. I think it's so
Yeah.
comforting as a reader that you can just like hop in and
Hmm.
out and know exactly what you're going to get. But for me as an author,
Yeah.
it's not interesting. So I write like I try to keep evolving my books. I find that I
Yeah.
tend to, it's funny you say like that I move from different genres, but it's funny because I tend to relapse into fantasy constantly. So
Okay.
I that like any book I set out to write, I'm like, I'm going to write a contemporary romance. And then suddenly it
Yep.
becomes like a fantasy. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to write like this science fiction book. And I Taken to Viraxia and that entire series did actually end up being a proper sci-fi romance.
Yeah.
But that's probably the only one that didn't have, you know, a genre that was like undercut by fantastical elements. And so that's kind of where I'm always at. And I'm always trying to do that with my characters too. So if I have like a particular kind of FMC, like because I specifically write a lot of Black FMCs, it's kind of become a challenge for me to try to make them different. And one of the things that I find most
Yeah.
frustrating about this book so far is that she, for me, was a really different kind of FMC that I've ever written. And
Yeah.
I really liked writing her, but it's funny to see
She's
some like early reviews of like diehard, like classic Elizabeth Stevens fans who are like, but she's so different. Like this feels so different. And I'm like, yes, but they're all kind of different. And also
I
Starling is very
loved
different
it.
for me.
Oh my gosh, there's maybe I didn't dive in deep enough, but because I started with Dark City Omega and then this is the second book that I've read,
Hmm.
I loved them so much that I'm nervous to go to I have the second one. It's right here. I have it. I bought it. But I get so nervous when because they're all fighting the big bad. I was like, but I love them so much. I
Yeah.
don't want to leave. I'm not done with them. But so this is the second book of yours that I'd finished. And then I read Starling. And so for me, I'm used to your characters being
Yeah.
so different.
I'm different. Yeah. And that's one
So
thing that I
different.
really like writing. And I also really like that about like writing non-human
Yeah.
MMCs. And you can do whatever you want. Like also with the physicality and like the extra appendages and just all of that great stuff is
His
hilarious.
okay, so we should talk about this book, which is All Superheroes Need PR, which just came out today. It is May 27th. Go read it. I have been talking about this book since March. So if you've been following me on like I read the arc in March and I died and I stop. I can't. I need a moment. I need a moment. It's so good. And one of the things that I love most about this book is not just the actual world that you've built. It's a great contemporary. It is in our world. It's got a really fun plot with the aliens and the superheroes and how you handled that. But this FMC felt her journey was so grounded.
Hmm.
And what if I should I should do you want to give us summary of this because maybe they haven't followed me or you obsessively, or I could read the back of the book and they don't know exactly what's happening.
All Superheroes Need PR is a contemporary workplace romance. If the workplace was a firm that manages superheroes,
Yeah.
because these are beings in the Superman Clark Kent style that have fallen from outer space. They have no memory of who they are, and they each have like some kind of extraordinary power. And humans decided, a la The Boys, which is a big inspo for this book, to put these
Okay.
superheroes into camps. And so they decided they were going to have villains and they were going to have heroes and essentially form brands around each of these. And there are some that are unaffiliated who haven't chosen their sides yet. And that's where we meet Roland because he's incredibly apathetic about humanity, the world, and just life as he knows it. But he comes into the office for his first meeting with the heroes department and he meets Vanessa, who's the PR director tasked with trying to kind of like rebrand and convince him over to the good side. And he does not care about the good side, but he immediately cares about Vanessa and decides that he should have her. But in order to do that, he's going to have to reform some of his image and learn how to be nice, because Vanessa is like a pretty shy, she's like a powerhouse in the business department, but she's a pretty shy FMC with anxiety and does not respond super well to guys who just want to burn everything to the ground. And that is where their romance begins.
It is so funny. They're so funny. So Vanessa is the point of view that we get for the first 6 or 7 chapters, and she has anxiety as she's working with the team, but you can also tell that she, at her core, is number one, incredibly competent at her job, and I love that. This isn't a fumbling FMC who's going to trip and spill the pages over there because she just can't. She's so competent at what she does, and she's got such a good head on her shoulders, and you can tell that by the team that she's built, by the people that she's surrounded herself with. And so there's this beautiful, not just found family with Vanessa and her actual family, which is a whole part of her journey and her plot, but also the team that she's built and the people that she gets to work with and how they work together to deal with the chaos that is Roland being a hero. Because he is so grumpy and rude, but lovable. Like the first, I just got this, so I don't even have all of my notes in this, but the first press conference that he does, he just shuts down reporters. No, dumb question. I don't think so. It goes through me. And he's
Exactly.
he's such a PR nightmare. But she's so competent, and she's built this team who rallies around her to support where she doesn't feel her strongest, with her public speaking, with her presenting. And the fact that Roland walks into this massive meeting and just, what from her perspective has this nope reaction to her, was so shocking. And then shows up. Can I ruin a little bit of the contract that happens afterwards? Because that was
Sure.
so she thinks she's lost the contract, that he's not gonna go with her team or anything like that. She drinks her sorrows away with some good old-fashioned day red and ends up projectile vomiting on Roland, who stalks her to the bar. And then she's told that she's gotten the contract and they need to work on this, and that Roland wants to work with her exclusively. And there's something really beautiful about the moment when they come together to negotiate this contract, and Roland goes, "So you're my wife now," and everything stops. Because one of the things that you've created in this world is a realistic version of what capitalism would do to superheroes. Like, let's be real, is what capitalism would do to superheroes. And so all heroes are part of this company, and there's a huge PR part of it, which include so aptly named Lois Lane clauses, which are fake significant others to the heroes to kind of help with their image. And so Roland goes, "So she's my wife." And everyone just stops. "I don't understand this. What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, I want her to be my fake girlfriend, my fake wife, right? There's a clause where I can make her do that, right? It says right here." And that is a ridiculous ask, I think. And all of us reading this know that you would never ask the CEO of a company that you're working with to play your fake girlfriend, especially someone who has severe social anxiety. But there's this moment when she looks at him and she sees that this isn't an ask that he's doing professionally. This is an ask coming from like the depths of his soul, and he is embarrassed and he is vulnerable. And so she decides, "Yes, I will be your fake girlfriend." And that was such a great moment and set up the caring that she has for Roland as a can you say person? he's an alien, like a person,
Yeah,
is
as a
a
being.
as a being, and really highlights the vulnerability that she sees in him and her willingness to meet him halfway. And they are adorable. They're
Mm.
so they're so cute. And the romance of this is really lovely, because not only does she have anxiety, but she has a history that you go into that really prevents her from handling confrontation well, which is part of the reason why she's built the team professionally around her that she does, because she knows she's not strong in that. So she has people around her who can go to bat in the way that she knows she needs for her company, but she doesn't do it for herself. And I love this. The first time that Roland and Nessa fight, he calls her Nessa. For those of you who haven't read it, you should. He calls her Nessa, and it's adorable.
Mm.
They fight, and afterwards she goes, I fought because I felt safe with him. He was vulnerable and I met him, and then I was vulnerable and he met me, and like, yeah, and we were allowed to get angry. And then Marjorie, she says, oh, we had a fight, and her best friend goes, "Oh, you fought?" And like knew what
Yeah.
that moment meant.
Mm.
And it's a moment that, like, so often we think of fights as conflict, as bad, as, you know, an indication of a problem. And in this story, there are so many things turned on its edge, including that idea of fighting, that when you can be vulnerable with someone, you feel safe with them, you can express when something isn't going your way. And that was just such a moment. It felt really powerful to me,
Mm.
both in the fight itself, but also when Marjorie like had the reaction to the you fought, because that's real. You don't, I find that in a lot of times authors shy away from the kind of realistic conflict in relationships, because you fight in relationships, and you need to be able to fight, and fight with respect, and fight with caring, and fight with that safety net of this person loves me. And I like, so early in their relationship, they were able to do that. It was great.
Yeah, that was a really important moment for both of those characters, just because
Yeah.
it was the first opportunity Vanessa had had in kind of her entire adult life to have like a romantic conflict. And that was like the sink or swim kind of moment for her, where
Hmm.
she had the option of either just, I mean, she could have easily just tapped out and just said like no more, or she could have fought back, and like the fighting back was really her fighting for Roland in that sense, because in the alternative it's just like, what do they say? They say hate and love border the same line. So really the opposite
Yeah.
of love is apathy. And so if
Yeah.
she'd been apathetic towards him, she wouldn't have fought back at all. And for Roland, it
Exactly.
was equally important because he's someone who's not used to any communication with humans at all. And if he does have communication with humans, it's always just extraordinarily deferential, with humans just fawning over him and him just getting his way. So
Hmm.
it was his chance to realize that, like, if he actually wanted something, like, he was going to have to figure out how to work for it. And so that was like a big moment for
Yeah,
both of them.
it was such a great moment for the two of them, because it set up a realistic dynamic within their relationship. And it didn't feel like a petty fight. It was a real disagreement where they needed to express themselves and come to a resolution, and then also apologize and forgive the other person. Like that,
Hmm.
though all of those healthy grown-up things
Yeah.
happened, which you don't often get to see in a romance. And I like when we see realism, because real relationships are hard, and they involve conflict, and they require respect and knowledge and fuck ups and figuring it out. And oh, we're gonna go back. I'm gonna totally turn a corner, sidebar, to one of the other things that I noticed in this book, and clearly you worked on, is the cast of characters around Vanessa, really, because Roland is an island.
Yeah.
Is you created an incredibly diverse cast of humans around this center story. And you did it with so much respect and thoughtfulness. And I like, obviously this was that it takes effort. It does, to make sure that your languages are correct, to know what the honorifics in Thailand are. So what was it about making this contemporary romance? Because there are fantastical elements of this, and with fantasy you can choose whatever you want, but you brought in so much realism to different cultures and ethnicities and languages and sexual orientations and all of that. Like, Marjorie is a trans woman as her best friend, and that's stated in the first chapter of this story. What is it about creating that cast of characters that is obviously important to you, and what did you do to make sure that you had who you had in this book?
Vanessa's like community is like its own character in the book for sure. It's like
Yeah.
an important, additional side character. And it was really important for me for two reasons. Just one, the main character, Vanessa herself, she is not a self advocate, and this story is not about her failing. So, like the Bone King and the Starling, it's interesting because I wrote them at very different times, but the characters have actually quite a lot in common, Starling and Vanessa. But Starling is very much alone, and she's very isolated in her environment, but that's not, and that there was a point to that. But for Vanessa,
Mhm.
that's not the point. She's like a PR director. She's good at her job. She's really like one of the best in the business. And there's no way somebody with that amount of anxiety could really get to that position unless they had a really good like team to act as their backbone. And so writing that team was a lot of fun. And it's also one of my pet peeves in contemporary romance when the FMC and the MMC don't have any friends. Like, they never seem to have friends in contemporary romance novels. And I get it because you're focused so much on building the relationship between the two mains. But I'm like, this is a 400-page book. And so far, there hasn't been one conversation between like the main male character and one other person that's like not,
He's
like,
got to have his own group chat. Like,
like there's nothing happening there. And so that was like one thing that I definitely wanted to do. And of course, the reason that cast came out so diverse is one, because of my own background. Like, I've lived in like 20 different countries. It can't be that many, but I think I did the math the other day. But I've lived abroad a lot, like a good chunk, like over half of my life has been abroad. Grew up in West Africa, and some of the characters have like direct inspiration from, folks that I've known and like friends that I have just around the world picked up. And so those are a little easier for me to write. Like characters like Marjorie, where like I don't necessarily have like a trans BFFFF, were a little bit trickier, but I felt so important just because of the time that we're in, and the frustrating, like, this bath, like, who cares who goes to the bathroom in what stall? Like, I just really can't imagine anything more ludicrously unimportant than choosing a bathroom stall. So yeah, some of those things were direct reaction to like the political climate and how uninteresting I find a lot of the conversations surrounding some of this really bogus stuff. Yeah, I had to do a lot of research in order to get some of that stuff right. But also the team at Montlake was really, really helpful. And even though I hadn't, so I tend to only ask for like sensitivity or to develop a sensitivity or cultural consultants when the character takes up a large portion of the book and when their struggle is a part of their story. And that was something that I did not want to have happen with Marjorie in particular, because that's just not like the, gay and Black and colorful friends that I have in my own life. Like, struggle is not a part of our daily lives. And also it just shouldn't have to be like somebody's role in a story to be like the Black suffering character. Like, it's just really frustrating to see that happen. And so I hadn't even asked for a cultural consultant around Marjorie. And yet, like, some of their developmental editors caught like a couple things, like a couple like weird nuances with language that I used that like they were like, maybe just don't phrase it this way, or like get rid of that, which I so appreciated. And then of course I had folks
Yeah.
looking at the Vanessa's actual like Mexican family, also because I do not speak Spanish. Like I've lived all over the world, but I have never even set one single foot into South America, which is shameful. But I would love to go. But until then, I'm going to need help writing,
Yeah.
you know, Latin characters.
Her family is so funny. They're it's I love them. So she has 5 brothers, and not all of them are older, but all of them call her their baby sister. She's like,
Yeah.
I am significantly older than you.
Yeah.
I'm not your baby sister.
I also just really wanted I just really wanted like the confrontations between Roland and the brothers are like some of my favorite scenes in the book. Like they
He
were some
melted my lacrosse stick.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like they oscillate between this like hatred because he's like with their baby sister, or this like idolation because he is like a superhero that they've
Yep.
know about and seen in the media their whole lives. And
They play basketball with him, and they're like, "You're too
yeah,
good. It's not
right.
fair."
Yeah.
Like, you fly. Like,
That was really
he
fun.
flies. Don't. What are you talking about? He could dunk. He could just. The fact that he dribbled is amazing.
And that was also part of like Roland's growth journey too, is like going from having no family to
Yeah.
having this like huge family that he had to like seek buy-in from. So that was like an
It,
additional step.
I'm not saying this is like the love of a good woman, because that isn't the case. Like, Vanessa does not fix Roland. She is not the answer to anything. But I think there are 2 aspects to Vanessa and Roland. Is Vanessa awoke. Well, she woke many things in Roland, and I'm not
Yes.
going to ruin that plot twist. But one of the things that she awoke in Roland is this desire for connection. And you mentioned this, that Roland's experience with humans were either I'm being studied or I'm being fawned over. And here was this person who did neither of those things, but he felt really drawn to. And so he had to learn how to relate to Vanessa in a very different way. And he did, and he really stepped up as an observer of, I want to be a safe haven for her, and I respect this person, and I want to be her partner, which was so great to see. And but it inspired him to, I don't want to say like change, but rejoin the world as an active participant. And so suddenly he had to make nice with strangers and go to the doctor and do things that he didn't care about before this, but were important to being part of Vanessa's life and being part of the world at large. And he never held that against her. It wasn't like, oh, I did this for you kind of situation, but also made him realize all of the things that he'd never had to work for or work at. And I think there is something to be said about any partner. It doesn't just have to be a man. It's mostly, but it doesn't have to be a man, that has been able to coast through the world as it exists and then is suddenly presented with conflict or struggle, and either through the partner that they've chosen or through the actions they choose. And how do they handle the revelation of what the world is? In Roland's first heroic act of being a superhero, it is a grueling, you set him on, this wasn't light and fluffy, this was a grueling rescue of days of work and agony and emotion, his and the people around him. And in remembering it, he'd never thought about it like that. And so there is a reckoning that Roland has to go through about what does it mean to be an active participant in the world. And what were the things that were really important for you to showcase with Roland's journey in that way? What was it really important for him to learn as he became an active participant?
Yeah, I say that's where like the sprinkle of fated mates comes into this series really, because these alien characters, they have these keys that they need to find on Earth in order to be able to like unlock basically their next level or like ascension into their next superhero abilities. And they don't know what they're looking for because they don't have any past memory. And for in Roland's case, because not all of the aliens have this experience, because some of them immediately came to Earth and had motivation. They were buying into like the capitalistic human lifestyle. And it's one of the really fun things about book 2, which is already done and
Oh,
dusted.
I know it's coming out in November. I'm really excited. No, yeah.
Yeah.
20, it's not the 25th. It's not the 25th?
Yeah, it's 25th.
Oh, it is.
A good thing to read on your Thanksgiving break. Exactly.
Yeah, 25th.
The character in book 2 is like Roland's opposite. I guess I can spoil it, but it's Tyrannus. I don't even know how to pronounce characters' names.
I don't remember how they said it.
Yeah, me either. And he is presented to us like literally on page 1 of All Superheroes Need PR, because he's this like golden knight in shining armor, like hero person. And so for Tyrannus, like he came to Earth and he was like, yeah, I'm totally gonna like accept the fawning and just be the golden boy and take these contracts and just be a millionaire and live like my nice penthouse life. There's
He's like the most beautiful man in the world.
Yeah, the most beautiful. Yeah, the most interesting man in the world. Yeah, he's literally not got a care in the world. So for him, it's not a question of like he's not even really interested in any of the alien stuff. And for Roland, he's not interested in anything. So for him, it was more like his whole world was grayscale, and when he meets Vanessa, it triggers something in him, and then everything turns to color. But there are, and so that was Roland's kind of journey, and in order to be able to to figure out, like even just to be able to figure out what it meant for himself, like he needed to be able to get closer to Vanessa, and she's not the kind of person that it's easy to get close to just because of her like past trauma and her history. And her terrible like upbringing and family life. And so Roland is like, he's oscillating between this, like, if I push too hard, she's going to run away. But if I don't do anything, she's also not going to do anything. And so he ends up using like what he knows to be her love of humans generally, which granted is, she's not super social. So on a personal level, not really, but she is at the end of the day a nice person. And so seeing him kind of go into this where he's like, okay, like F it, like let me try out what it feels like being a hero and see if that can help convince her. And that scene, by the way, was like one of the most fun scenes I've ever had writing ever. I don't know what it was, because usually like I'm with the character in the moment, but this was the scene I wrote where we were all watching the character be in the moment, and it was such a strange way to tell that scene, because I could have easily done it from Roland's perspective, but for some reason it was watching him do it on, like watching characters watch him on TV. was really, really fun. Yeah.
And it was not only, so we got like all of these different perspectives. It was not just Vanessa and her family and also her team watching the news of what was going on, but getting updates from the photographer whose name I can't remember. I'm so sorry. Right now, Monica, thank you. Monica sending pictures back and them like getting all these updates and what's going on. It was I think part of the reason why I loved it so much is that's what it feels like when stuff happens, like the big stuff happens in the world. Like rarely are we the person on the front line doing the thing. We're the people glued to our phone, glued to our TV, trying to get the next piece of information. And so that experience felt so real. I'm like, I know exactly what you're feeling. You're on your computer, you've got your phone, you've got a tablet. What do you have? Who tagged you in this? Like, what's going on?
Mhm.
How did that picture get up there? And so it felt, I think, very relatable in this moment that can be so unrelatable. What am I should probably get back to my actual list. This was your attempt to contemporary, but there are a lot of ways that you can bring fantastical elements into a contemporary setting. What made you choose superheroes / aliens?
I remember, I think I think it started with The Boys. I think I was watching The Boys and I was
Mhm.
like, this is horrifying. Like the plot is so brutal, but like the world building is so epic. I really
Yeah.
loved like because we've had X-Men and we've had Marvel, but I really loved The Boys' take on capitalism and like how they fold into society and stuff. But damn, if that series isn't dark as hell, it's so
So I will
nihilistic.
watch it. I watched the first episode because I have a deep, deep love of Carl Urban, and I went, nope,
Yeah, I know.
can't.
I made it like most of the way through the first season, but I was like, there's no way.
No,
I can't do this. My mental
no.
health. But it was, I then went on just like Amazon, I remember, and I was like, I wonder if there's like this from The Boys from a romance or X-Men from like a romance perspective. I would love to read that. And maybe I had already read at the time Gracie and the Grump by Mariana Zapata, who I adore. But Gracie and the Grump was the only one I could find as an adult superhero romance. And I really liked it, but it's so interesting because Mariana Zapata, we all know she's like a slow burn contemporary romance author. And so her take on superheroes was very much from that perspective. I still loved it, adored it, but it was missing for me like the Marvel elements of what I
Yeah,
love about superheroes. Like, where's the explosion? I need at least one explosion. And so I was like,
yeah.
yeah, and that just got me thinking, how I wanted to do superheroes and construct them. And then this book was born.
I love it.
And yeah, and I pitched it to I definitely would not have started working on it yet if I hadn't pitched it to Montlake and they liked it.
So what made you decide, because you've been indie since, really that first push. What made you decide to pitch this book to traditional publishers? Or how was that process for you?
Yeah, I always say it's just so fascinating because I heard R.F. Kuang speak on this a while ago, but she basically, I mean, she has like a whole PhD in this exact like diversity in publishing topic, but I did not know that like I'm going to misquote all of these facts, so don't correct me,
Fun.
but in in the early 2000s or something, there was like one black acquiring editor at like HarperCollins or something, and you can see directly on like the kind of chart of like
Yeah.
how many BIPOC authors that have been published every year, like the little spike corresponding to that.
Mhm.
And I always just found it so fascinating that the reason that I got this book deal, even though I never ended up working with her, was because of a black editor at HarperCollins. So this
Yeah.
woman named Aja, who was at the time at HarperCollins, one chapter more. It's their digital first imprint.
Okay.
She reached out to me after having read, I think, this Very Mate series, and she was just like enthusiastic about my work and wanted to know if we could work together. But it was a digital first imprint, which, if folks don't know, it means they don't do print runs. They don't maybe even do audiobooks. Sometimes they do these days.
Yeah.
And there's no advance or anything like that. And I know how to publish an ebook. Like by
Mhm.
now I can do that. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really benefit me at all. And she and I talked about it, and she was like,
Mhm.
look, you don't seem super convinced. Like, why don't you talk to this agent that I met recently? And anyways, she put me in touch with my current agent, who's Amy Collins at Talcott Notch. And Amy had realized that I was about to publish Dark City Omega, and she read it and she was like, I don't know if I totally get this, but I'm going to try to sell it for you. Amy was like,
I'm
this
like
is
so mad. I love it so much.
I know. She was like, this is a little dark. There's some issues maybe with some consent and the nodding I don't know about. But
It's
let me
fated
stop.
mates. It's heat. You just have to go with it.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously.
She pitched it around, and it was like really quickly swept up by this Montlake editor who loved
Mhm.
it. Lauren at Montlake, she's a real MVP. But she had to try to pitch like all the nodding and like what Omegaverse was to like the old white guy at Amazon who signs the checks, and he was just like, no, not interested.
Well,
But
that was dumb. That
yeah,
was dumb of them.
Lauren was it
Wrong.
actually is like really dumb considering that Ali Hazelwood published an Omegaverse like 3 months later.
Yes.
But anyways,
Yes. Thank you.
um,
I mean,
yeah, and
it's not
so
technically Omegaverse, it's just got a knot, but like, it's
yeah,
not semantics. Like,
semantics. Yeah,
semantics.
I know. Maybe that helped her
I
publisher get behind it.
I will never forget. She at Stimulus, she made everybody draw knots and like collected the panel of drawings and was like, these are beautiful and I will hold them forever. So you can ask her about that tonight. Be
So
like,
good.
why didn't you ask me to draw you a knot?
They
Like, you
love
have Susan Lee's. Why don't you have mine?
Oh gosh, that is really good. I'm gonna do that. See me next
You
time.
should. I'm gonna. You're talking to her tonight. I'm gonna be on that Zoom.
Oh, and anyways, I ended up pitching to
Yeah.
Lauren. It's like a ridiculous pitch. It was like 2 paragraphs of like, I have no idea what's going to happen in this book, and like one chapter that actually doesn't even exist anymore. I rewrote the entire first chapter. And somehow she was able to sell that, and that was
It's
pretty
great.
cool. So and the
Yeah.
reason that I ended up going down this route at all, because like you said,
Mhm.
I am indie at heart. I am a trad skeptic, especially as
Don't
a Black
blame you.
woman in this space.
Don't blame you.
But I just at this current stage, and what I always tell
Mhm.
anyone looking for a book deal is, why do you
Yeah.
want it? Because if you want help with the writing part, or if you want help with the marketing part, you are going to be disappointed. If you want help with the middle part, which is where I need help, which is the
Okay.
production, I just can't manage the production anymore. And
Yeah.
so, pregnant as I am, you know, a toddler terrorizing my house, like tiny
Yes.
dog who acts like 7 children,
Yeah.
and just the size of the overwhelming size of my catalog at the current moment, I needed that help. And this is also like one of my main
Yeah.
things with being an author is just you constantly have to evolve, and that also requires experimentation.
Mhm.
So for me, I am willing to try anything once. Some stuff works amazingly well, and as you go farther along, the more you try, stuff tends to work exponentially better. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Bone King and the Starling was my first ever attempt at like doing direct sales for like ebooks and audiobooks. It was my first time ever doing a surprise release. It was my first time ever doing like a early run of special edition books, and like all of those things worked phenomenally well. Meanwhile, like other stuff I've done in the past, you know, with Amazon ads, Facebook ads have never
Yeah.
worked for me. Like a lot of paid marketing strategies have never worked for me. So they're just stuff that you just learn to cut
You
out and
try.
yeah.
You try and you don't do it. I love that's something that is really important, I think, for people to remember, both as consumers and also authors, that it's important to try new things as an author and as a consumer. Like, your authors are going to try new things and we have to give them the space for it, because I'm sure that there are people who are like, why are you going contemporary? I want your this. Or the question that I am going to ask is, are we going to finish the Omega series? But like, I can't fault you as a consumer of your art, you doing other things. And I think sometimes as consumers, we get a little too attached to what an author does or has done. Like you were saying, that Starling and Superheroes is a little bit different from your typical FMC, that some of your readers are like, what are you doing? Well,
Yeah, right.
that's we have to let people and our authors and to grow and explore and meet them where they're at sometimes. But I do want to know
Yeah, I
if
mean, I'm
the
absolutely
rest of
guilty of
the
that. Like,
Omegas are coming back.
I mean, Mariana Zapata, who I brought up, like
Yeah.
she wrote like a fantasy or something that came out very recently, and I'm like, what? Like, why did you do that?
That's, why
And
not?
I'm like, okay, I've gotta, I like her as an author, so I'm gonna give it a shot. But it is still so weird for me. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
And yes, and obviously the Beast of Guatemala series is gonna be completed. That series is a victim of its own success because it did very well and then like attracted a couple super fun projects to me, that I ended up last year only publishing one book, which was totally wild for me because as an indie author, I like in order to
Normally, they're indie
survive.
authors.
Yeah,
You
I mean, in
publish
order to
so
survive,
many.
I aim for 4. I usually I've been falling short of that like lately, just with kids and stuff. But last year was because I think I did pretty phenomenally well considering that I wrote like 5 books last year, but only published the one. So that's also kind of fun too, just having front loaded so much stuff. So now I can
Yeah.
just like celebrate the releases.
See the fruits of the labors.
Right.
And
Not when I can.
that's something I noticed with other indie authors is you just got to pivot sometimes where the inspiration comes from. As you move forward, are you sticking with publishing if we want to keep it? But you've moved into publishing for this. Do you think that you're going to keep the things that are established indie as indie and move new things to the publishing? Do you envision a hybrid, or are you just going with the flow?
I definitely would like to remain a hybrid author where I have some
Yeah.
indie titles coming out and some traditional published books coming out in tandem. I just think that the audiences for the 2 books are just so different. Like I can write like my weird, bizarro stuff for indie, and I have like a robust enough fan base now, which I'm so grateful for, that likes reading that weird stuff. So I know
Yeah.
that I can just, give you guys a book and you'll be like, this is weird, but I like it. And trad works so differently that it's kind of like
Yeah.
it gives me just like a chance to like, I think a book like this is something that I would have had a hard time putting out indie because I feel like it's really light compared to a lot of the other books that I write. And so in a sense, like in a
Yeah.
way, like doesn't totally fit in super nicely with the rest of my catalog. So it gives me like a chance to write like different kinds of books, like at their core, like different, just
Yeah.
like different, yeah, just different vibe
Tone.
books,
Very,
yes,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, it gets a little tricky with trad publishing because like I don't know, some contracts have like weird clauses, like non-compete clauses and stuff, and that gets like really dicey for authors. So that was something I
yeah.
tried to make sure to avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got lucky with like my contract feels pretty relaxed so far.
Okay.
Yeah, and with my agent as well, she's pretty
Yes.
straightforward and like very reasonable. Um, so hopefully that never becomes a problem. But I have
No.
definitely heard of authors who are like, I can't indie publish a book for like 2 years because
Because of whatever it is. I think it helps or it hurts if you've got a very specific style. Like if you're like, oh, I do X, Y, and Z, but this, I feel like
yes,
you can make the
that's
argument
that's actually
is
true.
different
Like if
enough.
you only write like contemporary romances, you're going to have a
Yes.
hard time indie publishing some and trad publishing the others. And that's kind of why I like
Yeah.
having the vision. It's like I'm not allowed to publish another like contemporary superhero romance. Like that's pretty specific,
Cool.
and I'm okay
That's
with
totally
that.
fine. More Vikings, more nodding. I want those crazy Omegas in the city to die a horrible death. And I want more
I know. I can't
my
wait to get
beloved
to the.
like Echo and oh, I love
You guys
them.
are gonna freak out at the last battle scene in the very last book. It's like something
Oh
that I
God.
envisioned from like the writing of, but you actually really have to read Shadowlands Omega, because I loved Echo and Adam until I met Kianda and Yaren, and now I can't even like remember who Echo and Adam even are. Like,
Oh,
Kianda and
see,
Yaren are like maybe my favorite couple I've ever written.
I mean, that tells me, because I remember so viscerally, like, number one, when she stabs herself in the thigh, I'm like, I love that. It's so anti what
Hmm.
typically happens with Omega. I'm like, this is so great. And then to not to make it weird, but the vine cage,
Yeah, Cage
I
was really.
loved everything about it. Everything about I remember texting Seffi. I'm like, the figure eight motion. I was like, when that happened, I was like, I know exactly what's happening in this. And I love everything about this. Thank you. So just I know we talked about the second book in the superhero series. Are there any other projects that you want to share before we head into our closing questions? Like, what's coming up next for you besides the human?
Right. Yeah. So getting this
Besides the human.
giant human out of my body would be really great. But actually, yes, there's like some stuff. There's a bunch of really cool stuff coming up, but I'm not allowed to talk about any of it. So
No.
there's a surprise project that's coming in just like that's announcing in just like a few weeks now. Collaboration with a bunch of other authors. But for these The Very Mates fans, it may or may not involve a return to Picosa Earth, with monsters thrown in, because I'm definitely in my monster era right now. And
Totally
then
fine.
I was invited last year, maybe even yeah, must have been last year, maybe even before that, I don't know, to a project that's launching only in early 2026, though. And that one is a book that I'm currently finishing up right now, which is my last like contract owed book that I have yet to finish. And I literally owe it in like 5 days. I have no idea how I'm
Oh,
gonna finish. We'll see what
you're
happens.
37 weeks pregnant today.
I
Like,
know. I
good
mean, I
luck.
like, kind of literally don't have a choice. So it's not like
Yeah.
it's a biological imposed deadline as well as like an artificially mandated one. So
Like, there's a doctor that's gonna if that baby doesn't want to come out, there's a doctor that's gonna kick them out soon.
yes,
There's
exactly.
there's a
So
there's an
gotta get that one
expiration date.
done. But for the fans of monsters, that's like my first, like what I would consider like real monster romance series, and I'm
Mhm.
so beyond excited about it. It's non-con, so beware. And it's also
Okay.
the appendages are out of control. I write weird when I'm pregnant. So it's a very weird book that I'm excited for people to read. I know. Like,
Oh
I
my god.
like pitch stuff to like trad publishers, and I'm like, I don't think I can send them this one. Like, this is not for you.
Here at Jason Reads Romance, I like to end all interviews with the same 5 questions. And the first one is the meanest one, so I know what I'm doing. It's on purpose. But it is, what is your favorite romance novel?
My favorite book is probably The Gargoyle by Andrew Davidson, and it's so desperately romantic, but it's not a romance. It does
Oh.
not have a happily ever after. However, that's not to say that it's not the ending. It's a very satisfying ending, but it's not like a traditional romance in that sense. It's just like
Okay.
one of the most beautiful pieces of fiction I've ever read in my entire life, especially as someone that likes to travel, because this one travels all across like time and space to tell like
Yeah.
these different romantic stories from different cultures and different time periods, and they're just absolutely insane. It's the only book he's
All
ever
right.
written, and it took him like 12 years to write because of all of the research that he did. But it's yeah,
Wow.
one of my favorite books. And then ironically enough, this is what's funny, is that I'd say my favorite romance is probably
Yeah.
War by Lara Thalassa. And Lara Thalassa and I always bond over the fact that The Gargoyle is our favorite book. So
Oh,
just this kind of like, clearly we came from the same like origin
the
origin
you're the
story.
same origin
Yeah.
story.
Honestly, Underlock
Okay.
might be up there too. I reread Underlock a lot. Oh, and yeah, I have to add Sucker by Natalie Shea also to that list, because that was a book that I read in like 2024, and it was like my first, I don't know, it was like my, sadly, like my first Black contemporary workplace romance that I like. I mean, I know I can't be the first one I've ever read, but in either case, it was like it felt really new and refreshing for me, and I just absolutely adored everything about it.
There are those books that like hit you in a new place, even if you're like, I don't know if that's the best book ever, but it hit me in the right way. And I think those are so valid.
Yeah, it's like
As
I'm really bad at remembering books. So like if I
yeah,
remember a book, then it either had to have been phenomenally good or like really a piece of crap, like really
yeah,
terrible. And
yeah.
so I'm like, I know I've read other Black contemporary romances before, but this is one that like I won't forget. It was just so good.
And those are I love those, like the ones that
No,
just
and I
hit
think it was her
differently.
debut too, like her first published book ever. And just
Oh
like,
my God.
yeah, she
Love
had it
it.
on.
Okay, so where is question number two? Where slash how do you prefer to read?
I read like on my phone in the dark in the middle of the night, like trying to go blind. I don't, if I
Mm,
have a book on my shelf, I probably won't ever read it. So.
really? You're a phone reader?
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. I will
Right.
read, strangely, I read non-romance in print, and then I read romance just on my phone.
All right. Hey, no judgment. You gotta hide under the covers. So here at Jace Reads Romance, we have this concept called comfy sexy. And it is based in the idea that in your comfiest place, in your safest space, you can still explore your sexuality by reading a romance novel. So what is the phrase, well, not so, but what does the phrase comfy sexy evoke for you?
Hmm. I guess I'm not really sure. I guess maybe like sitting on my couch in my pajamas writing romance. That's where,
Yes,
yeah, writing sexy, feeling comfy. That's the
I
only
love
way.
it.
Anyways.
Writing sexy, feeling comfy. So
Mhm.
the follow-up question to then is, where do you feel you're sexiest?
Not pregnant. So definitely just some other time and place. Yeah. I just could not be like, I feel like I'm properly disabled right now. It's just so out of control, like how giant,
It
how
is,
gigantic I am.
I would never know. Like from here up, you could not tell.
Unbelievable. It's just
Oh man.
terrible. So I don't even know how to answer that question right now. Ask me again in
Ask
6 months.
I was but you could have answered that, 8.5 months ago. That is when you felt your sexiest.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So before we finish, what is the one thing that you want women to know about sex and sexuality? You might call it your soapbox thing.
I guess it would probably just be that like everything's kind of okay and just don't be ashamed about it or weirded out about it and like asking for what you want, I think is something that hopefully girls in the coming generations will learn how to do better because I know at
We
least
did
in
not.
mine, yeah, exactly. I
We
don't know
did
what
not.
it is. Like my friend group is not great at that. A lot of people that,
Mhm.
you know, end up having bad relationships with people because they're not able to ask for what they want or even really maybe no. And that's, I think, one of the
Yeah.
great things about romance novels. It gives you like such a safe place to explore. Like if you want your pelvis broken, like in the kiss of the basilisk, or if you want like to wait in a slow burn and 98% and get your first kiss, like those are all okay.
Have EMTs on speed dial. But thank
Exactly.
you. Thank you so much for spending time for celebrating release day, or at least distracting yourself on release day by being here.
So
I
thank
hope
you.
I hope that this was fun. If people wanted to follow along with what's coming next, where can they find you on the internets?
The best place is to be on my mailing list. So if you go to booksbyelizabeth.com, you can find the newsletter sign up there. Patreon gets access to everything first, including ARCs, and otherwise social media. So Instagram is probably like the third best spot, and it's just E. Stevens, author.
I will put all of these in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me, for writing these books, for writing these books, for being such a joy, for holding on to my Starling book until Stevie Lit. It's just taking up space in your house.
All good. Very happy.
Yeah, and I'm so excited for what's coming. I'm so excited for what's coming next for y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much.
Jace Reads Romance is a 3 Paws Productions podcast. Produced by Seffi, edited by Michael Achenbach. Our theme song is written and performed by Diana Weishauer. For show notes and more, head to www.jacereadsromance.com. That's JAYCE Reads Romance. Follow us on socials at Jace Reads Romance everywhere. For more exclusive content, visit us on Substack, where you'll find extended episodes, bonus episodes, and more. Have a question, story, or a book recommendation you know I'll love? Email Jace at jacereadsromance.com or call and leave a voicemail at 661-JACE-RR. That's 661-529-2377. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And as always, this is Jace, holding space for you.